Yarden West didn't expect his Bugatti Chiron to sputter to a dead stop in the middle of a highway in the middle of nowhere. He stared blankly at the dashboard, then at the empty fuel gauge. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, yanking off his sunglasses and tossing them onto the leather passenger seat. The heat was unforgiving, and the Nevada sun beat down on the black car like it had a vendetta. No cell service. No assistant. No driver. Just him and a car worth $4 million with no gas. He stepped out, slamming the door with more force than necessary. The silence out there was unnerving. He hadn't been alone, truly alone, in years. Yarden West, billionaire tech mogul, wasn't used to silence. He was used to boardrooms, roaring jets, and people jumping at his every word. Not a ghost town highway and the smell of melting asphalt. That's when he saw the dust cloud in the distance. A beat-up, sun-faded red pickup truck rattled closer until it rolled to a stop behind his car. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a woman, head full of wild curls, ripped jeans, and a t-shirt with a faded band logo. She looked like the opposite of everyone in his world. And she was beautiful. "Hey!" she called out, shielding her eyes. "You good?" Yarden blinked. "Ran out of gas." Her eyes skimmed the car, then landed back on him. "In that thing?" "Yeah," he said dryly. "Apparently even Bugattis need fuel." She laughed, and it was the kind of sound that made you feel like you'd just taken a breath after holding it too long. "I've got a gas can in the back of my truck." "You want to try your luck? Unless you've got a private runway back there and a jet ready to pick me up, I'll take the gas." She walked over to the truck bed and hoisted out her red can. "You don't look like the kind of guy who gets stranded often." "I'm not." She handed him the can. "Then today's your lucky day, stranger." He shook his head and took the can, pouring it into the tank. "I'm Yarden, by the way." She raised an eyebrow. "Yarden? Fancy. And you are?" "Savina. Savina Carter. Not fancy." He smiled for the first time in hours. "Well, Savina, not fancy, I owe you big time." She shrugged. "You'll owe me if it actually starts." Yarden turned the key. The engine purred to life instantly. She gave him a slow clap and leaned against the truck. "Well," she said, brushing dust off her hands, "looks like you're back in business." He got out, closing the Bugatti door. "Let me repay you. Dinner. Drinks. A thank you?" She snorted a laugh. "You're joking." "I'm completely serious. You don't even know me." He gestured to the car. "And yet you still stopped. In this heat. With gas. You didn't even ask for anything. I do that sometimes. Help people." His eyes studied her for a second. There was something about her, something completely unfiltered, real in a way he wasn't used to. No one did anything for him without expecting something in return. "Dinner," he repeated. "My treat. You pick the place." She looked at him for a long beat, like she was trying to figure out what planet he'd dropped off from. Then, "There's a diner 10 minutes from here. Greasy burgers. Terrible coffee. Sounds perfect." They ended up at a worn-out roadside diner with cracked leather booths and a jukebox that only played songs older than both of them. Savina ordered a cheeseburger and fries. Yarden ordered the same, because he didn't know what else to do. "So," she said, dunking a fry into ketchup, "what do you do when you're not running luxury cars out of gas in the desert?" Yarden paused, debating how much to tell her. Women usually knew who he was before he even opened his mouth. But she clearly didn't recognize him. It felt weirdly refreshing. "I work in tech," he said casually. Her eyes narrowed. "Like apps and stuff?" "Something like that. You don't strike me as a guy who codes." "I don't. But I built a company that does." She chewed her fry slowly, then nodded. "So you're one of those suit guys?" "Sometimes." She looked at him again, this time a little differently. "You talk like someone who has a driver." "I do. Just not today." "And a jet?" Also true. Savina leaned back, folding her arms. So you're rich. I am. She blinked. And you're sitting with me in a diner that smells like burnt bacon? He smiled. I like the company. Her cheeks flushed, but she covered it with a sip of soda. You're weird. Maybe. They talked for over an hour about everything and nothing. She told him she grew up in a town called Fallon, worked part-time at an auto shop, and dreamed of opening a rescue shelter for dogs. He told her about how he dropped out of college, built a tech empire from a garage, and hadn't dated anyone who wasn't after his money in the last 5 years. She didn't ask about his net worth. She didn't ask about his house or his car collection. She asked him what made him happy. No one had ever asked that. When they walked out of the diner, the sky had turned deep orange. He walked her to her truck, and for a second, neither of them moved. I don't usually do this, he said. She tilted her head. Get stuck on highways? No, he said, eyes locked on hers. Meet someone who makes me want to get stuck again. Her breath caught. He took a step closer. Can I see you again? She hesitated. You're not exactly my world, Yarden. I don't care. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery. My car leaks oil. I eat cereal for dinner. I once bought a yacht because I lost a bet, he said. We all have our quirks. She laughed softly. You're serious? He nodded. Dead serious. She looked at him for a moment, then reached into her truck and grabbed a pen from the visor. She scribbled something on a napkin and handed it to him. I'm off Mondays. If you're still interested. I am. She climbed into the truck. Then come find me. He watched her drive away, the taillights fading into the desert dusk. For the first time in years, Yarden didn't feel like chasing a deal or checking his phone. He just wanted to see Savina Carter again. And he would. Yarden stood outside the bakery on a quiet Monday morning, holding a coffee from a cafe that probably didn't deserve the 5 stars it claimed online. He hadn't slept much the night before. Not because of work, he delegated everything today to his COO without explanation, but because he couldn't stop thinking about Savina. Her voice. The way she never blinked when she met his gaze. The way she didn't flinch at the weight of his name. He checked the napkin again. Same hand-drawn directions. Same loopy handwriting. The apartment above the bakery smelled like almond croissants and something he couldn't name but wanted to bottle. He knocked. The door creaked open after a few seconds, and there she was, barefoot in a worn gray tank top and soft linen shorts, holding a toothbrush. Either you're early, she said, mouth half full of toothpaste, or I lost track of time. You said Monday. You didn't say when. She stepped aside, brushing past him to spit into the sink behind a partially closed door. You know, most guys would have texted first. I didn't want to give you the chance to change your mind. She wiped her mouth with a towel and tossed it over a hook. Confident. Determined. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what's the plan? I figured I'd take you somewhere. Like? A place that doesn't smell like burnt sugar and yeast. She reached for her keys on a hook shaped like a dog bone. You're not taking me to some rooftop bar where drinks cost half my rent, are you? I was thinking something more unexpected. Define unexpected. He held out his hand. Trust me? She hesitated for a beat, then placed her keys in his palm. If you try to kidnap me, I will scream. Duly noted. Instead of the Bugatti, he'd brought a vintage navy blue Mustang convertible. It was the first car he'd ever bought, back when he still had to check his bank balance before filling a tank. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she saw it. You drive this? She asked, climbing in. I thought it might make me seem less obnoxious. Don't worry, she said, sliding on a pair of sunglasses. You still reek of money. They drove for 20 minutes, the city slipping behind them as the landscape opened into wide hills and faded gold grass. He didn't tell her where they were going. She didn't ask. The wind tangled her curls, and she let it. Eventually he pulled into the parking lot of a tiny airfield. There was one hangar, one plane, and not a soul in sight. Her eyebrows rose. "You're taking me flying?" "Sort of." They walked inside the hangar, where a single-seater glider sat gleaming under the skylight. Next to it, on a makeshift picnic table, was a spread of takeout boxes from a Persian restaurant and 2 bottles of sparkling water. No caviar. No champagne. Nothing polished. Savina stood still for a moment, looking from the food to the plane. "You brought me to an airfield to eat lunch?" He shrugged. "Better view than a rooftop." She slowly made her way over and popped open one of the boxes. "You ordered tadig." "I asked the chef to pick his favorite." She bit into a piece of saffron rice and sighed. "Okay." This was a good call. They sat on the bench, sun pouring through the high windows, the occasional engine hum in the distance. "I've never been in a glider," she said between bites. "Then we'll go up." "Seriously?" "I have a pilot on standby. He owes me a favor." She stared at the glider. "You're not scared?" "Terrified. But I like doing things that scare me." "And this isn't some ploy to impress me?" "I'm already impressed by you. I'm just trying to keep up." She looked at him for a long second, then turned back to her food. "I don't know what to do with that kind of honesty. Most people lie to you. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear." She picked at a piece of chicken. "You don't do that. I don't have time to." "You're not what I expected," she said finally. "Neither are you." They finished lunch, and true to his word, Yarden arranged for a short flight. The pilot, a middle-aged woman with silver streaks in her braid, greeted Savina like she'd known her for years. As the glider lifted, Yarden stayed behind, watching from the ground as Savina grinned through the canopy, hair pulled back, eyes wide with wonder. She looked more alive than anyone he'd seen in months, maybe years. When she landed, she practically bounced out of the cockpit. "That was incredible," she said, breathless. "You looked like you were flying that thing yourself." She shook her head, laughing. "That was the craziest first date I've ever had." "Does that mean there'll be a second?" She hooked her arm through his. "Ask me again after I've had dessert." They drove back with the top down, neither of them saying much. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full, like they were both still processing the altitude. He parked in front of her apartment. She didn't get out right away. "I don't usually let people get close," she said quietly, eyes straight ahead. "Why not?" "Because most of the time they leave. Or they want something. I don't want anything from you." Her eyes turned to him. "That's the part one don't know how to believe." He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. She opened it slowly. It was a hand-drawn map. A copy of the napkin she'd given him. "I wanted to remember it," he said. "The first time I met someone who didn't ask me about my money." She folded the paper again, carefully this time. "I don't care about it." "I know. Still. It's a lot. You're a lot." He leaned closer, his voice low. "You make me want to be less." She didn't kiss him. She didn't pull away either. "I don't trust easy," she said. "Then I'll earn it." She nodded slowly. "You've got a long road ahead. I've walked harder ones." She opened her door but paused before getting out. "I like the Mustang. It suits you. More than the Bugatti?" She smiled. "That one screams midlife crisis." He laughed. "This one screams what?" "Man trying to remember who he was before the world told him who to be." She closed the door behind her. He didn't drive away until she disappeared up the stairs. Yarden had closed deals worth billions. He'd convinced investors to back impossible ideas. But nothing had ever made his pulse race like watching Savina Carter walk away with a piece of him he didn't know he'd offered. And he knew, without question, that she was going to change everything. Yarden didn't realize how loud his penthouse could be until he was alone in it. The glass walls stretched high above Manhattan, the city glittering like a spilled jewelry box beyond them. The marble floors echoed under his steps, and the silence hung like static. There were no car horns, no espresso machines hissing, no laughter from the woman with paint under her fingernails and motor oil on her jeans. He stood in the kitchen, still wearing the navy sweater he hadn't taken off since flying back from Nevada that morning. It was the first time in years he'd left New York without an entourage or a reason. No meetings. No press. Just a woman who made him forget how much of his life was spent pretending to care about things he didn't. His phone buzzed on the counter. A name flashed across the screen, Marissa Langley. He didn't answer. He hadn't answered her in weeks. Marissa had been a convenient fixture, gorgeous, poised, the kind of woman who looked perfect on magazine covers and even better on his arm. But she never asked him what he was afraid of. She never asked him anything that couldn't be answered with a monetary figure. He opened his laptop instead and pulled up a blank document. He stared at it for a moment, then typed 2 words, Fallon Project. He didn't know what it would be yet. Maybe a donation to Savina's dog shelter idea. Maybe something bigger. But it was the first time in a long while that business felt tied to something real. The next morning, he boarded a jet with no press release and no board approval. He landed back in Nevada by noon, stepping off the plane in jeans and a t-shirt, the kind of outfit his PR team would have had a collective heart attack over. His driver met him at the gate, but Yarden took the wheel himself. He didn't go straight to Savina's place. He wasn't sure he should. She hadn't promised anything. She hadn't even said she wanted more. But he had to try. Instead, he drove to the auto shop. The one she'd mentioned in passing, the one with the faded sign and gravel lot. He pulled into the back, parking beside a rusted-out Chevy that looked like it hadn't moved since the 90s. A teenager in greasy coveralls looked up from under a lifted hood. "You lost?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm looking for Savina Carter." "You the guy with the Mustang?" Yarden nodded. "She's at the shelter." "What shelter?" The kid pointed toward the hills. "It's not a real one yet. Just a barn with 6 dogs and a dream." Yarden was already halfway back to his car before the sentence finished. The barn sat on the edge of a dry field, its paint curling at the corners, but the sound of barking was unmistakable. He stepped inside and was immediately greeted by a chorus of tails thumping and paws skidding across concrete. Savina was at the far end, crouched beside a mutt with one ear and a crooked tail, brushing out its matted fur. "This is a surprise," she said without looking up. "I thought I'd drop in. Most people call. I'm not most people." She finally looked at him. "You flew back." "I didn't feel like waiting." She stood, brushing dog hair from her shirt. "You smell like jet fuel." He stepped closer. "You smell like wet dog." She smiled, small and reluctant. "Why are you here, Yarden?" "I've been asking myself the same thing." "Well, did you come up with anything?" "I miss you." She blinked, caught off guard. "You hardly know me." "Maybe. But I know how I feel when I'm around you. And I haven't felt that in a long time." She leaned against the crate, arms crossed. "This isn't your world." "I don't care. You say that now. But what happens when your board starts asking questions? When the tabloids catch wind of you hanging out in barns with rescue dogs?" He stepped closer. "Let them. I've got enough money to survive a scandal. It's not about surviving it. It's about whether you want to live through it with me." "I do." She laughed under her breath. "You're insane." "Probably." She studied him for a long moment. "I haven't even shown you the worst of it." "Then show me." She tilted her head. "You want to pick up dog poop and patch leaky roofs?" "If it's with you, yes." She shook her head but didn't push him away when he reached for her hand. "I don't need saving, Yarden. I'm not here to save you. I'm here because you remind me of who I was before I got lost in everything else." Her fingers curled around his. "This thing between us. It's not going to be easy. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for real." She let out a slow breath. Lunch breaks in 20 minutes. You want to stay and help clean the kennels? I'd rather be here than anywhere else. They worked side by side for hours. He held a hose while she scrubbed floors. He took a call from his CFO with a barking pit bull in his lap. She laughed when he mistook flea shampoo for conditioner and turned a golden retriever's coat into a foamy mess. By the end of the day, they were both covered in dirt and fur, but something between them had shifted. The air felt less uncertain, more solid. As the sun dipped behind the hills, she handed him a bottle of water and sat beside him on the edge of the porch. You didn't flinch, she said softly. I didn't come here to flinch. I thought you'd run. Running from you would be the stupidest thing I've ever done. She looked down at their hands, fingers still intertwined. I don't fall easy. I'm not asking you to fall. I'm asking you to lean. She rested her head against his shoulder. I'm not used to someone choosing me when they have 1,000 other options. I don't see them, he said. I only see you. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and something smoky in the distance. The sky was streaked in violet and gold, and for the first time in years, Yarden didn't want to be anywhere else. Not in New York. Not in the boardroom. Not even on his yacht in the French Riviera. Just here. With her. With the woman who'd stopped for a stranger on a highway and ended up giving him something he hadn't realized he was missing. A reason to stay. The rain arrived just before dusk. It wasn't the kind of violent thunderstorm that bent trees and flooded roads. It was softer, steady and unapologetically persistent, falling in silvery lines against the barn roof where Savina and Yarden had taken shelter after a long day's work. The dogs were quiet for once, tucked into their crates or curled up in blankets, lulled by the sound of rain and exhaustion. Yarden sat beside her on a makeshift bench made from old pallets. His jeans were still damp from hauling hay earlier, and his elbow brushed hers each time he shifted. She didn't move away. He watched her trace a groove in the wood between them with her thumb, her brow furrowed in thought. You're quiet, he said. That's not like you. She glanced at him but didn't smile. I've been thinking about what happens when you leave. I'm still here. You flew in on a jet, Yarden. You think that makes you grounded, but it doesn't. Her voice wasn't sharp, just tired. Your world doesn't slow down. It waits for no one. He rested his forearms on his knees. You think I don't know that? I think you don't realize what it means to give that up. I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing something else. She looked at him then, eyes searching. No one chooses a barn full of half-wild dogs over a penthouse in Manhattan. I do. Why? Because I've had all of it, he said, his voice low. The cars, the properties, the interviews, the investors. I've had people clap when I walk in a room, and I've had women laugh at jokes I didn't tell. And not one moment of it ever felt like this. She didn't speak right away. The rain filled the space between them like breath. I'm scared, she said finally. Of believing you. I know. And I don't want to be some pause in your life. You're not a pause, he said. You're the reason I'm changing the tempo. She turned her head away from him, blinking fast. You keep catching me off guard. I'll stop doing that when you stop expecting me to let you go. She exhaled through a laugh that caught in her throat. You really weren't supposed to mean anything. Neither were you. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The air between them pulsed with something unspoken but understood. The next morning brought clear skies and a shift in everything. Savina woke to the sound of a truck engine and barking. She pulled on boots, still streaked with mud, and stepped outside to find Yarden unloading bags of cement, lumber, and fencing from a delivery flatbed. What are you doing? He didn't stop lifting. You said the roof leaks. The south wall's rotting. And these dogs deserve more than a drafty barn. She crossed her arms. So you decided to rebuild the whole place? I've already hired a crew. They'll be here in an hour. Yarden, I'm not trying to take over. I'm just giving you the tools. What you build is up to you. She stared at him. You did all this without asking me first. He set down a beam and wiped his hands. Because I knew you'd tell me no. You don't get to buy my life. I'm not. I'm investing in it. She wasn't angry. Not exactly. But she was overwhelmed. And he saw that. I'll leave if you want me to, he said. But the supplies stay. The crew stays. And the offer to help still stands. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the smallest dog crate, opened the latch, and let a brindle terrier scramble onto the dirt. You're impossible, she muttered. I get that a lot. By mid-morning, the barn was alive with motion. Hammers echoed against wood, voices called measurements, and Yarden worked beside them without fanfare. No one treated him like a billionaire. No one called him sir. He lifted beams, carried supplies, and laughed when a pup stole his glove mid-nail. Savina watched from a distance at first, arms folded, lips pressed in thought. But when one of the workers asked where to mount the new gutter brackets, she stepped in without hesitation. By noon, they were side by side again. You're not bad with a hammer, she said, adjusting a level against a beam. I built my first prototype in a garage with duct tape and a desk fan. I know a thing or two about makeshift. She gave him a look. You're not just doing this for me, are you? No, he said. I'm doing it for myself too. They worked until the sun dipped low again, and as the crew packed up, Yarden pulled her aside. I want to show you something. She followed him to the back of the Mustang. He popped the trunk and pulled out a rolled set of blueprints. You've been busy, she said. I had my design firm draw up a plan. A real shelter. Not just a renovation. A space with full plumbing, heating, separate play yards, adoption rooms. Her throat tightened. You planned all this without knowing if I'd say yes. I'm not asking for a yes. I'm asking for a maybe. She ran her hand over the paper. Where? There's a piece of land 2 miles from here. I bought it yesterday. She looked up sharply. You bought land? I didn't want anyone else to get it first. You're insane. I'm in love. The words rang between them like a bell. She froze. You don't get to say that after 2 weeks. I can't help when it happened. I just know it did. No one falls that fast. Then I'm the first. She stepped back. Yarden, this can't be real. It is. She tried to walk away, but he caught her wrist gently. Why are you running? Because people like you don't stay. I'm not people like me anymore. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. I don't know how to let someone in, she whispered. Not all the way. Then start with the part of you that wants to believe me. She didn't answer with words. She kissed him. It wasn't careful or soft. It was messy, full of heat and fear, and every wall crumbling at once. His arms wrapped around her waist, and for the first time, she didn't hold back. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his. You scare the hell out of me, she said. Good, he whispered. Because you terrify me too. Days passed, then a week. The barn transformed slowly, then all at once. The foundation for the new shelter broke ground. Journalists caught wind of the project, but Yarden refused interviews. This wasn't about press. It was about rebuilding something real. Savina moved the dogs into temporary housing at a nearby vet clinic, a favor owed, not asked. The town watched with cautious curiosity, unsure if the billionaire really meant to stay. Then came the fundraiser. Savina hadn't wanted one. But Yarden insisted, and she agreed on one condition: no black ties, no red carpet, no gala. So they hosted it on the land where the new shelter would rise. Under strings of lights, with hay bales for chairs and food trucks lining the fence, the entire town showed up. Yarden wore jeans and boots. Savina wore a denim dress and no makeup. They raised over $200,000 by nightfall. Later, with the stars overhead and the crowd thinning, he took her hand and led her to the center of the field. I have one more thing, he said. If it's another building permit, I swear. He dropped to one knee. Her breath stopped. I don't want to just build a life around you, Savina. I want to build one with you. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, nothing flashy. She stared at him, eyes wide. You're out of your mind. Completely. She looked around at the lights, the dogs curled up at corners of the field, the workers laughing by the fire pit. Then back at him. Say it again. I love you. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then yes. The cheers from the few still lingering nearby erupted, but neither of them noticed. She pulled him up and kissed him, and the world faded around them. The billionaire who ran out of gas didn't just find a woman who helped him. He found the reason he built everything in the first place. And this time, he wasn't driving away. The sun rose over the newly framed shelter, casting long golden shadows across the field. The scent of fresh timber mixed with dew settled over the soil, and through the open window of the small trailer parked beside the build site, Savina stirred awake. Yarden was already gone. She found him an hour later, kneeling beside a pile of bricks, sleeves rolled to his elbows as he helped lay the foundation for the main office. His hands were dusted in mortar, his shirt clinging to his back. What caught her wasn't the work, it was the ease. The way he'd folded into this life like he was made for it, like the man who once lived in penthouses and flew cross-continental for lunch didn't miss any of it. He looked up as she approached, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his arm. I didn't mean to wake you, he said. The crew needed a second set of hands. You're not on payroll. I know. But I like it. She handed him a thermos. You like laying bricks? I like the quiet. The way progress doesn't hide in this kind of work. You put something down, and it stays. There's no guessing. Savina leaned against the half-built wall. We're getting there. We are. She watched the crew around them, old friends who'd volunteered, locals who'd come to care, and professionals who hadn't known her name a month ago, and now asked if the insulation should be eco-certified. You've changed everything, she said quietly. He looked at her, dust clinging to his jaw. No. You just finally had the space to make what you'd already started grow. Later that afternoon, as the last nail was driven into the roof trusses, the mayor stopped by. He was cautious but polite, a man who'd once dismissed the idea of a rescue shelter as too ambitious for a town this size. Now, he shook Yarden's hand like they'd been partners for years. We're holding a town council meeting next week, he said. We're adding the Carter Foundation proposal to the agenda. I think it's earned a permanent place. Savina blinked. You're naming it after me? Yarden gave her a look. You didn't think I was going to call it West Enterprises Animal Haven, did you? She turned away before he could see her expression. The following days moved fast. Final plumbing was installed. The fencing went up. The adoption website, built by Yarden's team on a Sunday afternoon, began receiving applications even before the doors officially opened. People from neighboring counties reached out to volunteer. A university offered to send vet students on rotation. A luxury pet food brand mailed unsolicited pallets of supplies. Savina took none of it for granted. Still, beneath all the momentum, a question lingered. One she hadn't asked? One he hadn't offered to answer. What happens when this is done? She asked one night, the two of them sitting on the tailgate of the Mustang, watching the stars blink to life. When the shelter's running and the attention fades? He didn't hesitate. Then we keep going. You mean with us? I mean with everything. She watched him carefully. You're not going back to New York? I already resigned from the board. Transferred my shares to my COO. He's earned it. I've been coasting for years, thinking growth meant more zeros. And now? Now I think it means something else. Savina tilted her head. So you're just going to stay here? Build dog runs and eat chili from the food truck downtown? I bought the lot next to the bakery. Her mouth parted. For what? Whatever we want. A house. A cafe. A garage where you can rebuild engines and I can pretend I know what I'm doing. She stared at him. You're serious? I've never been more. The first adoption day arrived with a ribbon cutting, but no pomp. Yarden wore his boots. Savina wore a dress with pockets and a bracelet made from leather and beads that one of the local kids gave her. 37 people showed up. 14 dogs went home. A little girl cried when she hugged her new spaniel, and the mayor choked up giving a speech about second chances. As the sun set over the new facility, the last family drove off, and the gravel lot emptied. Savina sat on the porch steps, the same porch that hadn't existed 2 weeks ago, the same spot where she'd once told Yarden she didn't trust Easy. He joined her, handing her a slice of pie wrapped in wax paper. From the bakery, he said. The owner named it after you. Said it was the least she could do. She took a bite. Cinnamon and pecans. Tastes like victory. You did this, he said. We did. He took her hand in his. You still scared? Terrified. Me too. But I'm not running. He looked at her, something soft settling behind his eyes. Marry me tomorrow. She raised an eyebrow. You're not kidding. I want to marry you while your hands still smell like sawdust and peanut butter treats. Before the world tries to make any of this shine too much. She pressed her lips together, thinking. Then she said, Okay. The next morning, they stood under the sycamore tree beside the shelter, where a handful of dogs barked in uneven harmony, and the air smelled faintly of hay and honeysuckle. She wore a dress she hadn't planned on. He wore a shirt he hadn't ironed. The officiant was a retired judge who owed Savina's mother a favor. The rings were simple bands bought from a local jeweler who cried when he sized them. Savina looked at Yarden as the judge began the vows, and she didn't think of the Bugatti, or the diner, or the airfield. She thought of the moment he knelt in the mud and laid the first cinder block without waiting to be thanked. When it was done, he kissed her like the world was just beginning. And she kissed him back like nothing had ever made more sense. They didn't fly off on a private jet. They drove back in the Mustang, windows down, her veil catching in the wind as he held her hand on the gearshift, and the dogs howled their approval from the hill. A month later, the shelter reached full capacity and launched a second location. Yarden taught himself how to weld. Savina adopted a 3-legged beagle named Moose. The bakery added a second pie called the Billionaire's Folly. It sold out every week. They bought the land behind their house and planted a grove of trees. Not for profit or attention, but because they wanted something that would outlive them. And on quiet nights, when the air was warm and the stars were sharp, Savina would look at the man beside her, the one who'd run out of gas and into her life, and wonder how she'd ever lived without him. He didn't need headlines anymore. He had home. He had her. And she had every part of him. Forever.